Once upon a time, about 5 years ago, I had the marvelous idea of searching up Pokemon Adventures fanfiction. It took me to a website called fanfiction.net where I read a story simply titled, Welcome to the Neighborhood. Life was good. Then, 5 years later, I decided to read it again, for the sake of nostalgia. But it was gone. Gone from fanfiction.net, gone from Google. I would never be able to read this masterpiece of literature again. Then thought that I need to find this fanfiction. And so I thought that maybe I could find it using the Wayback Machine in the Internet Archive. The Wayback Machine is an archive of over 698 billion web pages as of writing this, and has been archiving as many web pages as possible since 1996. So I typed fanfiction.net in the search bar, and found an archive of the homepage from 2017. However, when I tried searching for the fic from there, or searching for it itself on the Wayback Machine, I found nothing. After some poking around on Google, it seemed that this could only happen if the author themselves decided to delete the story. I then thought that I would never again read that fanfiction and moved on to other things, but I always kept this in the back of my head. Sometime later, I was on Reddit and thought that maybe there was a sub that could help me in the same vein as r/tip of my tongue. I then found that there was an r/fanfiction, which had a flair that showed promise. Lost fic. I then typed out a Reddit post explaining the situation and went to bed. When I woke up, I saw that someone had replied to my post. Needless to say, I was excited and thought that this person with more expertise could possibly find a lost fic. I responded simply with 2 characters, as I had no idea how to respond. The same guy replied to my reply that night asking if I remembered the name of the author. I told him that I did not. I then slightly panicked. What if the fic was lost forever? Then some random guy commented on the post with a drive link and saying that they had it but only the first 7 chapters. It's also worth mentioning their user flair. I was shocked and thanked them, and at how they managed to find it. And while I waited for a response to that, I checked out the drive link to finally revisit this incredible work of literature. The text document started with the title, Welcome to the Neighborhood, followed by the author, some random Pokemon guy, then had a bunch of information. I scrolled to the bottom to see where the story ended, and it clearly didn't end where I remembered it ended. I then scrolled back up to the top and saw that the information included some URLs. These included URLs to the story itself and a URL to the author of the story's profile. I decided to start with the story URL. Upon copying and pasting it into Google, I was greeted with a screen saying story not found and story is unavailable for reading. This made sense as earlier, Google said that the story would only disappear if it was deleted. I then tried copying and pasting the author URL and it went to an author page alright, just not one that I recognized. Instead of seeing just some random Pokemon guy, I saw Uncle Drew 4444. Scrolling down, all 3 of the stories that they had written were My Hero Academia fics. However, their profile picture did have the Pokemon Adventures characters, so I didn't lose hope completely. Then I realized 2 things. Firstly, there was a PM or private message button in the top left, and secondly, the URL still said just some random Pokemon guy. Upon further inspection, I found out that you could put anything in there and it would still lead back to this page. What mattered in the URL was the number. I then played around with the number in the URL for a bit and found something that I thought was important. The number in the URL is the order that the account was created in, and since the account said it was made on May 9th, 2014, it still seemed like I was on the right track. I then cross-referenced this with the text document, which said that the story was created just 12 days later, on May 21st, 2014. This had to be the right person. Maybe they had a copy of the fanfic saved somewhere in the account or something? At this point, I just had one more way to proceed, and that would be contacting them. I clicked the PM button, but it turned out that I had to make an account. Before creating a quick throwaway account, I quickly downloaded the text document onto my computer, because who knows, the random Redditor could delete it at any time. It was at this moment that I finally received a response to my question of how they managed to find the fic, and I don't know what I was expecting, but it's good work. Then I had to go to India for a month and forgot about the whole thing. So I made a throwaway account, and then asked the author of the story if they had a copy of the fanfic they once wrote, clicked send, and then waited. In the meantime, while waiting for a response from the author, I decided to go back and try something that I hadn't thought to do before. And that was plugging the story and author URLs into the Wayback Machine. First, I plugged the story URL into the Wayback Machine, and nothing. Not surprising, there's probably like millions of different fanfictions. Then, I plugged the author URL into the Wayback Machine, and what? Saved one time, November 12th, 2018. The author page was saved back in 2018. As anyone would, I clicked on it to check it out, and when I did, I saw a page that I recognized. It was the author page of just some random Pokemon guy. Upon scrolling down, I saw the fanfic in all its glory, just sitting there. But one more thing that I noticed was that this old version of the fanfic had 8 chapters. That's one more than the text document had. I knew that the Wayback Machine was read-only, but even knowing this, I clicked on the fanfic. Then it actually loaded. I could read it. Then, I clicked on the chapter list, and of course, clicked on chapter 8. And after clicking it, the chapter loaded in. I had found one of the lost chapters of the fanfic. However, when I scrolled to the bottom, it still didn't end where I remembered, and so, the search continued.
July 2022. As I'm writing the script, it's almost midnight many months later on February 6, 2023, but it's a much more reasonable time as I make this video. And I thought maybe I could find an archive of the fanfiction by just finding a mass archive of fanfiction somewhere. I found one that archived the first 10 million fanfics on the site, but upon referring to the URL, the fic was number 10,366,733. Just barely out of range. I even checked the massive, nearly terabyte file just to check if the fanfic was there, but to no avail. Checking the throwaway account I made for fanfiction.net, the author still hadn't responded, and I found it incredibly unlikely that they ever would, as the last time they were ever online was almost a year ago. So I went back to the document I had obtained from that one kind Redditor and checked the URLs again, plugging them back into the Wayback Machine. I noticed that they were archived back in November 2018, but wait a minute. I read the fanfiction in 5th grade. What year was that? So doing some quick maths, I found that I went to 5th grade in the 2017 to 2018 school year. What this meant was that I finished 5th grade in mid-2018, several months before the archive, meaning that the archived version had to be the one I had read all that time ago. Opening the fanfic, I skimmed it, and found that the phrase I remembered being at the end of the story was actually at the end of the first chapter, which still made a lot of sense since I remembered not knowing how to switch chapters when I first started reading fanfiction. And in addition to this, I couldn't remember what any of the theoretical chapters past the 8th one were about. And with this, I realized that for over half a year, the lost fanfiction was in my possession all along. The end. Alright, so in short, I posted on Reddit, obtained the first 7 chapters, messed around on the Internet Archive, found an 8th chapter, had a faulty memory, and then essentially gave up before realizing I was stupid half a year later. Yeah, this was a waste of time, but at least I have it now. I'll even put the link to it in the description. but I truly am happy that I finally have the fanfiction back and can read it freely. So yeah, that's pretty cool.